In medical school, what we're taught is look at the hives, treat the hives. In functional medicine school, we look at what's causing the hives. The point is that this person healed themselves naturally. And that was enough for me to think, wow, maybe we don't have all the answers in medicine. We know that people who go through their day looking for what makes them happy tend to be happier and less stressed out. This is the reward that we get for all this work we're putting into our patients. Is she said, you gave me my life back. And that's a big deal.
Hi, this is Dr. Soma. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is for informational purposes only and isn't intended as medical advice. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or health regimen. Let's go to the show. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Dr. Basima Williams. With over 25 years in healthcare, Dr. Williams is a board-certified family and functional medicine doctor who has masterfully integrated lifestyle medicine into traditional care plans. She founded beingfunctional.com, a platform providing virtual consultations to support patients alongside their primary care physicians. Her innovative approach also led to the creation of Ultra Wellness Medical, a concierge practice that merges advanced traditional medicine with integrative health, focusing on prevention and longevity. Join us as we delve into her inspiring journey and insights. Thought this would be a great conversation to have to educate my listeners, my patients, about functional medicine, because I actually utilize a lot of functional medicine doctors to help my patients, and wanted to first hear from you how long you've been in practice, what made you decide to be first a primary care physician, and then your path to functional medicine and your training and everything, so we can learn more about you.
Sure. Are you ready for at least 10-minute answer?
Sure.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your love and desire for functional medicine and also to spread the word. So I'm originally from Iraq, and I remember way back in the day when my mom would go to the kitchen whenever we were sick and make us something to heal us. We never went to the doctor. I actually had never seen a doctor until I came to America for my first immunizations, which I knew nothing about. They just made us get it. That was the first encounter I ever had with a doctor, and even most babies are born at home with midwives and things like that. So that was my upbringing and that was my background, and I always gravitated towards natural healing anyway. I was on vacation about 15 years ago, so I've been practicing for almost 30 years, primary care, family medicine, board certified. And I was on vacation about 15 years ago and happened to pick up a book on this natural healing since I gravitated towards it anyway. And it really was an interesting story about a man who healed his gut and therefore healed his autoimmune colitis disease that almost killed him. And that was really intriguing to me. Several months later, I go back to my practice. Several months later, I have one of my favorite patients. We all have these patients that are always happy and upbeat and a smile on her face all the time. I walk into that patient's room that day, and this time the room and the air was really thick. And her eyes were puffy from crying. And she's, doctor, look at my hands. And they were swollen. Their wrists were swollen. Some of her finger joints were swollen. And after clinical exam and some labs, we diagnosed her with rheumatoid arthritis. So I sent her to a rheumatologist, just as I've been trained to do. And the rheumatoid doctor tried several medications, and it wasn't working. So in this case, Sarah, by the way, who was only 22, I had started seeing her when she was a freshman in high school. So we had gotten her through high school, gotten her through college. That summer, she had gotten married, planned a wedding, gotten married, bought a new house, started a stressful job, graduated college, lots going on in her life, a lot of fun, but very stressful. And that turned out to be the trigger that turned on her autoimmune disease that we later found out. Sarah came back to my office and said, I'm still in pain. I'm on these medications. Is there anything else you can do? And I thought, what's it going to hurt to try some of these principles that I learned in this book that I read?
Hey everyone, big shout out to Ariel Vivleka,
founder of Finally All Natural. Ariel is on a mission to educate people about hidden ingredients in skincare products. Did you know the FDA allows incidental ingredients that aren't labeled or disclosed? That's why Finally All Natural is special. They focus on how ingredients are created, excluding extracts and essential oils, and have world-first formulas that work for a variety of skin types. They've also partnered with CleanHub for eco-friendly packaging and offer an exclusive organic face oil that has been scientifically proven to boost the proteins in your skin, enhancing hydration and strengthening the skin barrier. All 100% vegan. If you're into holistic skincare or non-toxic living, Ariel is your go-to expert. Keep up the amazing work, Ariel. Get in touch with her today. All the links are in description below.
I ordered some non-traditional labs, and one of the non-traditional labs that was recommended is a celiac panel for celiac disease. She has celiac. We got rid of gluten in her diet. We also started something called an anti-inflammatory way of eating because I don't like the word diet. And so we put her on this anti-inflammatory way of eating, which was really rich in the healthy and right fats, the healthy proteins and the right amount of proteins, and lots of vegetables and a little bit of fruits, mostly berries and low glycemic foods. And her symptoms significantly reduced to the point where she was on just one medication and a very low dose. This was really important because Sarah, who was only 22 at the time, wanted to have kids. That was a turning point for me. After that, I decided to go full in. So I went to the Institute of Functional Medicine. It's a 3-year training program, and I became certified in functional medicine.
One of the things that I encounter with my patients is that a lot of people don't necessarily know what functional medicine is. They confuse it with naturopathic medicine. They confuse it with a whole bunch of other different things. And even when I talk to them as to why I'm referring them to a functional medicine doctor, they get confused and I have to educate. So I think this will really help to narrow that gap of knowledge. I want to take a moment to give a huge shout out to Melissa Murphy-Pavone and her amazing team at Mindful Financial Partners. Melissa has over 18 years of experience as a certified financial planner and divorce financial analyst. And what truly sets her apart is how she values people over portfolios. Whether you're going through major life changes or just want to take control of your financial future, Melissa's approach is all about aligning your wealth with the life you truly want to live. She doesn't just focus on growing wealth, but also on creating balance and purpose in your financial journey. You can get in touch with her at her website, mindfulfinancialpartners.com, and you can find all the links in the description. Be sure to check it out.
I like to wear both hats.
Okay.
I wear my functional medicine hat and my primary care hat when I treat people. So we can talk about one of your questions. The second question was your approach on being functional emphasizes holistic view of health. Could you explain how this differs from traditional medicine?
Right.
The tree analogy is a really good one for this in terms of what traditional medicine looks at and what we look at and how we're a little different. The reason I created this is to be that bridge between a primary care and somebody who wants functional medicine weaved into their care. And so it's not anti-medicine at all. It's
right
into and educating.
And I'm curious, what book was that you read?
It was called The Maker's Diet.
Okay.
And the maker is God. And so it was the spiritual healing. I happened to be at church that day. I was in San Diego on vacation. My husband took the kids after church. So I had a full afternoon at the beach by myself. So the only bookstore that I could go to was the one at my church. And they just happened to have this book. Yeah, it was a good one. And you can read it in one day. I don't know if it's really around. I don't know how popular it is, but that doesn't matter. The point is that this person healed themselves naturally. And that was enough for me to think, wow, maybe we don't have all the answers in medicine. Maybe there's more out there.
It's almost like it was divine intervention.
Yeah, for sure.
As we mentioned, as we were discussing offline, I do refer, I'm an internist for those in the audience who don't know what type of doctor I am. I'm an internal medicine doctor, and there are limitations to what I can do, but I have utilized some excellent functional medicine doctors in our community that have really been helpful for my patients when I find that I hit a certain ceiling.
Are you a woman with big financial dreams but no idea how to reach them? You'll love working with Dr. Annie Cole, a money coach who's on a mission to help women earn more, build wealth, and retire early. In her 20s, Annie was a burnt-out social worker, struggling on a $26,000 salary. By her 30s, she had climbed the ladder to a vice president role, invested over $350,000, owned $1 million in real estate, and cut 20 years off of her retirement date. She now runs her own coaching business, Money Essentials for Women, and inspires women to step into new levels of money mastery and confidence. Ready to see how Annie can help you? Set up a free financial consultation at www.money-essential.com/coaching. While you're exploring her services, grab a copy of her new book, 101 Ways to Build Wealth, at money-essentials.com/book.
You obviously take a very holistic point of view with your patients. And I'm going to share that there was this, and this involves my daughter. And I think she was about 6 years old at that time. And out of nowhere, and this was during COVID, when COVID first hit, she started getting hives out of nowhere. And it was all over, from head to toe. And we couldn't figure out what was causing it. And of course, just a lot of us doctors thought, oh my God, this is COVID when it first started. This is her version of COVID. But it wasn't. And it was happening 2 or 3 times a week. That's how often it was happening. Couldn't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we got her to an allergist, and they did a whole cascade of testing. Normal. And remember, she was 6 years old at that time. And I love my allergy colleagues, and this is no way criticism of them, but they were like, okay, just keep her on cetirizine, which is Zyrtec, and this should go away by 13. And I was like, 13? I'm like, that's 7 years. I'm going to give her cetirizine on a daily basis for 7 years. And as a physician, I do know the side effects and some of the consequences of taking medicines for so long. So I decided to take her to a functional medicine doctor. And my husband was like, there was a cost factor. He was like, you're going to spend how much? And I said, listen, if we get the answer here, I'm going to save you however much money we're saving by not buying Zyrtec every month, right? And we don't have to then administer her medication that she doesn't necessarily need. And I took her, and I was amazed that the doctor was able to spend so much time with my daughter that I don't even have in an insurance-based model, right? And spend so much time talking to my daughter, asking her all sorts of questions about her diet, her routine, how she sleeps, her stress levels. And she finally came up with, your daughter may be getting a little too much dairy, and also pointed out to me how that was evoking a histamine response. And I implemented it right away. I did not cut out the dairy altogether, but I significantly reduced things. And for example, if I allowed her to have ice cream, I wouldn't not necessarily let her have it again that week. So we just put in certain restrictions. And believe it or not, it went down by 80 to 90%. And she tested negative on the allergy panels that the allergist did, but it was inducing it. And had I not taken her to a functional medicine doctor, I don't think I would have been able to figure it out. So it was very useful. But a lot of my patients, they don't necessarily understand. And I feel like in the beginning, I was one of them. So perhaps you can educate us as to how functional medicine is different than, for example, the medicine that I practice. How does it differ? What are the nuances that we should learn about?
Yeah, and we can use your daughter as a perfect example because the idea too, even with Sarah's case, when you think about it, Sarah didn't all of a sudden become celiac, but there was a trigger. The thing that the trigger was all that stress she had for 3 or 4 months over the summer. And that was enough to push her body over the edge. So I assume your daughter was having dairy and having no problem, and then all of a sudden had a problem with dairy. Now, there must have been a trigger that might have pushed her over the edge. Having gotten COVID, while it was not the cause of the rash, I'm not saying your daughter had it, I'm just saying some viruses are what we call triggers, or she might have been put on a really strong antibiotic like Augmentin, and that's a trigger. And what happens is it increases something called leaky gut. And since the majority of your immune system lines the entire gut lining with the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, then it would make sense then that our immune cells are reacting more aggressively now to the dairy due to more of the dairy going through the leaky gut membrane. So everything we can do to really tighten that up, really important, increase mucus barrier, all that stuff is super important in your daughter's case, because the idea is to get her back to eating dairy if she wants it, but we're back to her super leaky gut body. And then also finding out, being more specific with kind of finding out whether she's allergic or sensitive to, it's sensitive to, not allergic to, whether it's the lactose, whether it's the whey, or whether it's a casein. And we have ways of splitting those 3 things out, because for some people, they can eat hard cheese and the casein and it's okay. For some people, they can't do the whey or the lactose, or some people just can't do the lactose, and we can supplement with some enzymes and things like that. So it's really complex. It's not like it's an easy solution. But with your daughter's case, what we would do, probably the most powerful tool, and why a functional medicine doctor has to spend an hour with our patients, is we do something called a timeline. And I do that on every single new patient. So a lot of patients will come to me with, I've been dealing with this for 2 years and I've seen 6 doctors and I'm no better. So that's typical, right, in a functional medicine doctor, because why in the world would anyone want to come and pay, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to see a functional medicine doctor when they can go see their regular doctors? And that's totally fair. You come see us if you're not getting better. So we do this thing called the timeline, where we map out everything that's happened from birth all the way through where you are right now. So if your daughter was a C-section baby, if she wasn't breastfed, if she was under a lot of stress, if she is, and also perceived stress, if she's not sleeping well, if she changed her diet recently, if you come to America from another country, especially, your diet changes drastically, not for the better. So we go through the history, and the primary reason we're going through the history is we're pulling out things like antecedents, or things that put you genetically at risk for X, Y, and Z, or triggers that might have happened, like if your daughter had gone on a really strong antibiotic for a really bad ear infection and then started developing hives. So we look for those triggers that were right around the time that the symptoms started. For a lot of people, it's around college time because of all the alcohol consumption, for example. So there's triggers like that we have to start pulling out. And then there's what we call mediators. And mediators are what predisposes you to having things like gut issues, primarily dysbiosis, or gut microbiome, or leaky gut, or constipation, diarrhea, heartburn, indigestion, low acid. So we really tweak out all these mediators, immune system mediators. Are you the kid who's always sick in class? Are you the one who catches every virus or every strep throat when anyone has it? When you walk into, all these are red flags for us. So in essence, what we're really doing is we're not looking at the medical problem per se. So that functional medicine doctor did not look at the hives, but she looked at why she has the hives. Now in medical school, what we're taught is look at the hives, treat the hives. In functional medicine school, we look at what's causing the hives. And by doing that detailed history and timeline, we start to look at risk factors for your child, for what may have predisposed your child to the hives or whatever medical problem it is.
And that's I think the key difference between a lot of, I don't want to call it alternative because I don't view it that way. But for example, from my background, I'm not an Ayurvedic doctor, but Ayurveda, acupuncture, these all focus on what is causing it, not necessarily the symptoms, the signs of it. Obviously, they look at those things, but they try to figure out how to treat the underlying issue that's signaling the process itself. So that's one part of being a so-called Western trained physician, right? I was born and brought up in this country, and I've always wanted to be a physician. I feel like that was my calling, but I never realized past medical school, probably during residency when you're thrown into the thick of things, where I was like, okay, a lot of this is preventable. I was in the heart of Bellevue Hospital, and I was seeing tons of diabetes and hypertension and all sorts of stuff and the consequences of that. And I started realizing like the preventative aspect is not really a focus in our current state of medicine. And I'm a physician as well as a patient. And on a personal level, I always try to access the preventative part for myself and my family. And fortunately, I have good access to excellent functional medicine physicians like yourself. Anything in the last few seconds of our podcast, anything that you absolutely wanted to include that we haven't touched on?
I would say you have touched on a lot, and I really appreciate this conversation. But one thing I do want to say is this. So many of my patients who we help walk through this journey, they listened to their gut. And that's not just a saying. That really is true. Your gut is your second brain. Listen to your gut. If you in your heart think there's something bigger and better for you, if you think that there's something that hasn't been diagnosed, and it's not because your doctor isn't the smartest guy in that town. It's simply if you don't know, you don't know. So if I didn't know what I knew, then there's no way I could practice functional medicine. That would be silly. So this is really speaking to your people who are watching this. If you truly believe there's something else, then find the person who can help you. And it may be a functional medicine doctor. It might be a naturopath, whatever it is. Keep digging until you figure it out, until you get the answers that you know are there. So listen to your gut.
Absolutely. Advocating for ourselves, especially when we know that something's not right, is absolutely correct, especially for us women. I think that's something I always tell my patients as well. How can we find you, Dr. Williams? Tell us about your website, about you mentioned the cooking manual, and if you have any links to social media.
Yeah, so you can go to feelgoodguthealth.com. That's our course that anyone in the country can take. If you want to be a patient, you would have to live in either or have an address. I have several patients who have multiple homes. So have an address in California, Missouri, or Florida, and then we could see each other virtually. And also we have a professional supplement store called myvitamin.com, which I curated certain packs. That's the main reason why we did it, just to make it easier for our patients to order. So we created a women's multi-pack. So every woman should be on a really good fish oil multivitamin, K2, D3, and a really good magnesium, for example. So those are what all my patients are on. Those are the ways that you can find and or work with me. I love questions. So we have a private Facebook group. That's where all my wonderful questions do come from. You are right. We do love them. We are not God. We do not know everything, but man, we'll sure help find answers.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure talking with you, and more of an honor that you were able to educate my audience about the pearls as well as how valuable functional medicine specialists are.
My pleasure.
And don't forget to like, share, and review my podcast. Remember, it's always ladies first on Soma Says. Let's make a difference, one conversation at a time.